Congratulations, I'm talking to all of y'all. Male shouldn't be jealous, that's a female trait. What you mad cause you push.
Welcome. I love when that shit just happens like that, like it just on screen. Like, what's happening? Welcome to Heart of City Radio. I am your host, Mr. Nobody. I got an empty seat. She ain't show up tonight. The African boy ain't here, but I got a special guest with me. Nonetheless, I got my man, Mr. Marcus Batchelor from the Board of DC Public School Education.
DC Board of Education.
Board of Education. I just messed that all up. But shout out. I'm a DC Public School graduate myself. Got two of them in the building. What school you graduate from, Glass? Dunbar. Class of what class?
Okay.
Class of 92. I'm class of 93 from McKinley, Texas.
I was born in 92.
All right, I was born in 93. There you go.
Indeed. These. Oh, youngster. That, by the way, was my man, Mr. Marco, our super producer. My favorite white guy is back in the building, Mr. Jacob. Things get taken care of when Jacob's in the building. Yes, indeed.
It's different when he's not.
And at 8 o'clock, before we come on every Thursday night, I would like for y'all to check out Sonny's World with DJ Glam, Miss Tawana, Miss Sonny. She just left the building, but we're gonna jump right into my man, Mr. Batchelor here. Tell us what you do. Why is your job so important in Washington D.C.?
Yeah, I'm Marcus Batchelor, born and raised here in D.C. in Southeast. Grew up, born and raised, still live in Congress Heights, and got elected to the Board of Education last November to represent Ward 8. 43 schools in Ward 8, both DCPS and charter schools. And really the reason the Board of Education is so important is that we are the only elected voice that speaks on issues of education in this city. Unfortunately, or I guess depending on how you look at it, the system is controlled primarily by the mayor and by the people that he or she appoints. And so the Board of Education has very narrow authority to advocate on behalf of policy changes and things that'll be better for students, but I take that duty very seriously, and I'm a product of the system. And so, I know what I gained from it, I know what worked well, and I know, very recently what didn't. And so, being able to do this work on behalf of young people, my peers who are just a few years younger than me, is definitely the blessing of a lifetime. And I've been blessed to do it for a year, and I've got 3 more years to go until re-election. So it's been a great experience so far.
Very good, very good. Give him a round of applause for that. Right, my man. And you were educated in Ward 8 also?
Yes, sir. So I went to Martin Luther King Elementary. Then my mom sent me uptown to Hardy Middle School. Then I came back and graduated from Thurgood Marshall Academy in Anacostia.
Okay, yeah, and I've heard great things about that academy over there, Thurgood Marshall. Let's get right. Well, let me get into that then. Get into this then. I should say, since we spoke of the school system and systems in Ward 8 with this big grading scandal that's going on at Ballou. Like how real is that, or how much of that is kind of like a smoke and mirror?
Yeah, well, I think the issues that are coming out or that have come out recently in the press are pretty much the system's worst kept secret. I mean, if you talk to teachers, if you talk to students, if you talk to parents, this behavior is not just happening in Ballou. I don't think there's some conspiracy at Ballou, but it's happening system-wide. And we have a bigger problem at the top where we have, a high, weight on test scores, and we want to make sure our scores are up and that numbers look good, but we're not really focusing enough on the things that are going to make students good adults and are going to make them prepared for college and career. The numbers are
college readiness.
Yeah, right. And the numbers are great, but we got to get down to really tackling some of the issues that students face, not just in the classroom, but out in their community and at home. And if we don't do that in a real way, attendance is always going to be an issue. The gap between white and black students is always going to be an issue. The gap between rich and poor students is always going to be an issue. So we got to get to the root of those issues at Ballou and at schools around the city. So why is
Ballou's, or why is Ballou the center of attention with this whole scandal? If it's something that's happening citywide,
Yeah.
or system-wide, I should say.
Yeah, well, I think it's unfortunate that Baloo was targeted. I think in this way, but I take it as an opportunity. And while I'll always stick, beside our Baloo Knights, and I still think our students are brilliant and they're resilient, and they're working hard, and trying to get every opportunity they can. But I look at it as an opportunity now that there is media attention on the terrible job we're doing with attendance, on the terrible job we're doing with achievement gaps. Now we can really say, what can we do differently, not just for our students at Baloo, but across the city? How can we make sure that we're supporting their families better? How can we make sure we're supporting them better, not just in the classroom, but out in the street? And so I look at this as hopefully a turning point where we'll say, yeah, we've been focusing on numbers and telling this pretty story about our school system, but let's really get down to tackling those root things that are leaving so many students behind. And that's what I've been focusing on since I joined the board, and hopefully we'll have a larger citywide conversation about this as we get more information into what happened at Baloo.
So is the quality, do you feel like the quality of education, well, it's kind of a rhetorical question, but just to hear it verbalized, do you think the quality of education in Ward 8 is that in comparison to the same quality of education that's being taught in Ward 1 or some of your more affluent wards in the city?
Right. No, I mean, I think we still have a problem with resources that we send to schools. I think we still have a problem with making sure that our schools and our teachers are equipped to handle the challenges that students walk into the building with, right? Like it's much harder, it's much easier for a student in Ward 3 who comes from a very affluent background to focus and get what they need in the classroom than it is for a student in Ward 8 who may not have eaten the night before, may not have eaten that morning, or watched a domestic dispute at home that morning, or felt unsafe coming to school, right? All of those things are on our students' minds when they walk in the building in so many school communities around Ward 8. And if we're not doing enough to tackle those issues, if we're not providing the support for students to get that type of support, then we're always going to leave them behind, because there's no way you can overcome that mentally if there's not that support system inside the building. So
basically you're saying it's greater than just teachers teaching. Right?
Oh yeah,
right.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've talked about this all the time, that every school in a community that faces the type of challenges we face in Ward 8 needs to be a community school where not only you have high quality academics, but you have those supports that students need to be successful. Whether it's students are coming to school dirty, so you need a washer and dryer in the building. Whether it's students have things going on at home or going on mentally, you should have enough psychiatrists and behavioral support specialists inside the building. And if it's that students have children that they need to take care of, we need to have daycares inside the school. If there's health issues, we need to have school-based health clinics, because that's what's going to bridge the gap. If students can feel safe and secure, then they're ready to learn. But if they're facing all of these challenges they can't overcome, they're never going to be able to focus when they sit down at that desk.
Yeah, so it sounds like you got an uphill battle.
It's not easy, but we need leaders in the city who are willing to have that tough conversation to say, look, our school system's not perfect, right? We're progressing, but we're not where we should be, and these are the things we need to do. And then we also need to have a government that's willing to say, look, the government can't do everything. The community has to step in to do some of these things as well. And so, a big push of mine has been to make sure we get as many community members involved in uplifting and supporting our students too, because we know government can't do it alone. And I think a major difference between some communities in more affluent parts of the city and in some impoverished parts of the city is the community network is a lot stronger, right? If a school needs something, those parents are going to rally around and make sure that school gets it, right? We need to do a better job at engaging parents and making them involved in supporting their kids' education too. And so there's a lot. It's an uphill battle, no, for sure. But if we have a government that's willing to be honest about where we are, and if we have a community who's willing to step up, I think anything's possible.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So just to give some background, so my day job I work for City or DC.
Okay.
So first interacted with you like a couple years back at an ANC meeting.
Okay.
Like went back when I served at Anacostia High.
Yeah.
So that's where I first heard of you. But thinking about like Anacostia and how like when they remodeled the building in like 2012 or so.
Yeah.
And the students said that they felt more safe coming to school, et cetera, which makes perfect sense to me. But like when you go to that building, like it's the top half of the building is completely remodeled, but the basement is still like what it was. And then you think about schools like Cardozo High that looks like a castle on a hill. And you got schools like Ballou High that are just like more beautiful than the college that I went to. How does that, do you have any idea about what that process looks like to like when they remodel schools and like what they put in there, what they don't put in? Because I'm thinking about when you mentioned like the resources in the city. Like Ward 1, that's Cardozo. They have a pool. Anna doesn't have one, but like it's like the same age students. So like how does that work?
So basically, you saying who gauges what with novelties or
what amenities?
What amenities? Right. Well, thanks for that. Right. What amenities? What group of kids are privy to as opposed to the other? That's basically what you're asking, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Who is that?
Yeah.
Like,
So school modernizations, the money for school modernizations come out of this pot of money called like it's like a capital fund. And so for capital improvements, we have this big pot of money to do the work on schools. And so a decision was made a long time ago that to make sure that as many schools got touched with the limited amount of dollars the city had, that they would remodel or renovate schools in phases. So like when you talk about like a completely new like first floor in Anacostia, but a pretty crappy basement, right? That meant like those are like phase 1 modernizations, and the point was that they were supposed to swing back around and do phase 2 or phase 3 to complete the building. I think a decision was made at some point that they wouldn't start on phase 2 modernizations until every school in the system had been hit at least once, which in some cases is fair, but if you have a school that's falling apart, right, you need the resources to fix it. And so that's kind of how that works. There's the capital money that goes into it. Like for instance, when the system looked at Ballou, like there was no salvage in that building, right? The building was built 50 years ago with inferior materials because it was for black students in a segregated city, right? And so by the time the city was looking at renovating Ballou, there was really no need. It was more cost effective to tear it down and build a new school. They're doing the same thing at Orr Elementary right now in Ward 8. Orr will have a new building next year. And so what I will say is I think our city has begun to do a really good job at paying attention to the quality of school buildings, and you're right, it makes a difference in the way students feel about their school, right? There's not one student who will say when they went from that old building at Ballou to that new building that they didn't feel something different about their experience, and that they didn't feel something different about how the city valued them as students, right? And I think every student should be able to walk into a building that they're proud of, and I think it makes a huge difference, and it makes a difference in the community as well.
But let me ask you this then, like you touched on something about destructive behaviors. So if you get kids that come from destructive environments, how much of a new building will you actually cherish, and how long will you cherish it? You know what I'm saying? Being that all you know is destruction. You understand what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, it's a challenge, but the way you do that is by creating school environments where students are proud of their school, right? They're proud of their school building, they're proud of their school environment. The thing about it is whether it's your school or your house or your community, if you're proud of it and you value it, right, you're not gonna destroy it. And so you have to, the first part is having a building that students can be proud of.
Like they have a nice house.
Right. So. But then they also have to be proud of the community that's inside of it, right? If they like their teachers, if they like most of their classmates, right? If they feel like they're getting something out of their experience, they're gonna cherish that, right? And I think that's how you turn that behavior around, is by making students have value in their education, in their community, and in the building that they occupy. And I mean, it's been an uphill battle, but at Ballou there hasn't been any major destruction, no broken windows, right. I mean, the students and the staff are taking good care of the building now, almost 3 years down the line. So, I think the newness and showing that the city cares about these students, I think, made a difference already.
Personally, I think that's part of the reason why Ballou got targeted for like all this bad press all of a sudden. Like, they have a brand new building that everyone's like really proud of and everybody like just wants to see. It's like, it's a spectacle. And then you got like last year's graduating class, like everybody was accepted into a college,
right,
which is like amazing.
Right, like some unheard of shit.
Right,
everybody just came out like everybody from Ballou graduated. Like,
so then all of a sudden, like, wait a second, hold on, time out. We gotta do something about this. I don't know. Personally, I think it's all conspiracy.
Yeah, I kind of felt like, it was like a little slight slap in the face too, because like, Southeast to me is like the last black stronghold in the city. And with that being said, it's like the worst of the worst conditions over on that side of town, from like high crime rates to, the unemployment rate is the highest over there, the literacy rate is the highest, the HIV rate is the highest. So the one bright glimmer to come out of Ward 8, next, was that Ballou had 100% graduation rate. Here comes the slap in the face. Nah, you niggas cheating. So, what I'm saying? Right. It was like a damper on the whole mode. You know what I'm saying? That here it is, we try to build our kids up and show them that, it's good things to come out of Ward 8. And here comes, the press. Right. Depressing everybody, what I'm saying? And it's been like an ongoing conversation. It hasn't been like just found a few students cheating over at Ballou and more news at 11. Right. It's been like the topic of headlines to a point. It's like, okay, man, stop it, man. Stop it.
Wasn't the principal like fired for the?
She was temporarily relocated, so she still has a job. She still works for DCPS, and from what I've been told is that at the end of the investigation, which is supposed to last 45 days, the public is supposed to see the report at the end of January. She's supposed to return. Right now, they have a Ballou alum as principal. He's the principal at Phelps, so he's got to go back to Phelps at the end of this 45-day period. And so my assumption is, if there's no wrongdoing uncovered directly connected to the principal, that she'll return to her job somewhere in January, February.
Well, let's hope she get her job back, and we pushing for you. What's the young lady name?
Yatunde Reeves, Dr. Yatunde Reeves.
Dr. Yatunde Reeves. I'm on your side. Come on down. Shit. I hope that, we can fix this whole narrative about, this scandal. Like I said, between Ballou and then last year, you remember PG had the same.
Yep. They're still going through.
Yeah, they had the same scandal thrust upon them. Like, it's like, and once again, Prince George's County, a black stronghold. Not saying that it's a conspiracy, but it just seemed mighty fishy. That what I'm saying? What I'm saying? It just seemed like mighty fishy every time you get a high percentage in graduation rates in a black stronghold. Here comes somebody pulling out. Nah, wait a minute. Wait 1 minute. Shit. Like, come on, man, stop it.
Well, I mean, what I'll say is the situation in PG, I think, is a lot more clear cut than the situation we got here in DC. Like, obviously, somebody fudged the numbers and somebody lied. Like, that's very clear in Prince George's County. My hope is that. My deepest hope is that that's not the case here in DC. But like I said, I think in terms of like the story of Ballou, like I said, this is a system-wide issue. So when I've been talking about this issue, we need to talk about the center of the issue, right? Like that there's a culture that, if this is true, has allowed this, has encouraged this, or at worst has demanded this to happen, right? And it's not just coming from school administrators, right? I mean, there are teachers who have come to the Board of Education over the past 2 months and said, yeah, I mean, what we're hearing is pretty bad on the news, but this has been happening at school for years. Right. This has been happening in this has been happening at my son's school for years. Right. And so my hope is that we focus on this as a system-wide issue and figure out how we change our policies at the top so that we prevent stuff like this from happening at the school level.
And I was just about to ask you that question. I didn't mean to cut you off, Marcus. I was about to ask you, and this just from my personal experience with, bringing kids up in the public school system or the charter school system, period, in the district. Mm-hmm. Is it that these kids are not being properly, do you think that kids are being properly educated in the beginning, like starting from preschool, so by the time they get to high school, 11th, 12th grade, have they been fully equipped throughout their primary years to go into high school and then further their education, or is it like a kind of like brush you along policy that's been going on?
No, well,
that goes on, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that for so many students, especially students from low-income backgrounds or students of color, we're not adequately preparing so many students for college or career or even life after high school. I mean, that's clear. I mean, there's no disputing that. I'm actually, this summer, we actually launched a task force on the state board around high school graduation requirements. And we got folks from around the city, parents, teachers, district leaders, students, et cetera, workforce developers, from around the city, but a majority of them come from east of the Anacostia River, which is unheard of for a task force in DC government to have the majority of representation be from east of the Anacostia River. But we thought that was important, one, because 40% of our students live east of the Anacostia River, like a majority of our almost a majority of our school-age kids live east of the river. And so we thought that we should represent the part of the city where most of our students come from. And if we're talking about preparing our students who are farthest behind, we need to have those folks who live and work in communities where our students are farthest behind to be at the table. And so we've been discussing, if these requirements aren't preparing our students for college and career, what can we do differently? And we're about halfway through that conversation, and we should be able to present some recommendations to the board and to the office of the state superintendent somewhere around February or March. But I'm excited about that work because for the first time in 10 years, we're taking a hard look at our graduation requirements and saying, how can we make them work better for our students who are farthest behind? And so I'm excited about being a part of that work too.
So you think it's really a discriminatory factor that goes into educating these kids in the city?
I mean, I think more than anything, I think it's economics. I mean,
that can spawn discrimination.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Definitely.
And but like I said, it's those extra supports that our students need that we aren't adequately giving them. Right. I don't think it's necessarily just like we're gonna put a whole bunch of money over here and no money over here, but it's students over here who need more money than students over here. It's more students over here who need more resources, and we're not giving it to them in the proper way. Like we have at-risk funding that's supposed to go to students who are at risk, who live in low-income communities, who face certain socioeconomic barriers to success. But we've heard report after report after report, year after year after year, that says that we're not using that at-risk money in the right way. That money's supposed to go to extra supports for students to do some of the things I talked about earlier, right? Provide those extra supports for families and students. But most of our schools east of the river, especially our big high schools, our small schools, they are under-resourced from just their general budget so much that they end up using more than half of their at-risk money just to pay teachers, right? So we're not even using the extra money that was supposed to go to these students to get that extra support. We're not even using it in the right way. And so if we're not willing to change that and make sure those additional resources go to students, they're going to continually be behind. It's going to take extra work for students who, for decades, from systems of racism, from systems of oppression, from systems of neglect, institutional neglect, we got a lot of catching up to do, and if we're not willing to make that investment and make it in the right way and be honest about how we're spending that money, I mean, we're just gonna keep leaving our students behind.
I got a comment from somebody, and I agree with you. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
That was very profound what you said, man. Give it up, man. Jesus. Give it up. I got a friend of mine. She said, Miss Tiffany Rouse. She says, changing the curriculum has changed how students are expected to learn. The curriculum is not inclusive of students with disabilities. How you feel about that?
Yeah, so I agree with that. I think I think where we fail most as a system is serving students with special needs. When I ran for the board last year, I ran against 2 other people, and one of them was a mom of a student with special needs, and she talked about how because the system here in DC didn't have the resources or didn't have the professionals to fit her son's special needs, she had to put him on a school bus every day from here to go to school in Baltimore to get the type of resources that he needed. We're not serving our special needs students. We're not serving our special needs students the way they should. We're actually hosting a parent empowerment series in Ward 8. We had our first session a couple weeks ago. The next session is going to be exclusively about special education.
Now, how crazy is that? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I found that's crazy to me if you think about Washington, D.C., for what it is, one of the most powerful, most powerful city in the world. And that was damn near deemed recession proof. How they discard some of our own residents. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like that you have a school system that's not compatible for kids with special needs and disabilities. That's crazy to me. That's crazy. That definitely needs to be changed. But how much of these matters come up like in the Senate or on the House floor, being that, you know, or being that this, like I said, you're in the nation's capital. And if you look at within the nation's capital and you look at how the residents of the city have been so undereducated, like is this a factor, or is this just something that goes ignored in city government and federal government? Yeah,
well, I'll tell you, under this government especially, but generally under the Republican Congress that we've had for the last 7 years, the only time that they address DC when it comes to education is when they institute a program that gives federal money for kids to go to private school, right? The Republicans in Congress aren't concerned about public education, and I dare to say they want to destroy public education and privatize it, right? We've seen it happen in cities across the country where there's this large influx of privatized education. It's happening in certain communities here in the city as well. But the Republicans don't care about public education. What they say is, we'll dump a bunch of money into DC, let your poor kids go to private schools with federal money, and just let the public schools decay. But I believe, and I think there's many people in this city who believe, that wherever you live, no matter how much money you make, no matter what zip code you live in, no matter what your mama did, your daddy did, no matter your background, your skin color, you should be able to leave your home and walk to a quality public school in your neighborhood. And the fact is, that's not true for so many students in my community. It wasn't true for me when I was going to school, which is why my mom sent me an hour and a half on Metro across town one way to go to middle school, right? And it's ridiculous. Students should be able to have a quality education right in their neighborhood, and if we're not resourcing schools in the right way to do that, then we're losing it. But I mean, back to your question, the Congress looks to take as much authority and power away from the residents of DC than it does to give more resources or to help us with our issues. They rather see us crash and burn than to see us be successful, and we've seen it over and over again, not just over the past 7 years, but over decades, where DC has made one step forward and Congress is forced us to take 2 steps back.
That's disheartening. And you know what? The reason why I kind of can concur with that, because the shit that scared me is when I had my youngest son and was enrolling him into schools. And, you know, I try to, like, you know, from, you know, my kids, you know, I got 3 kids, 23, 16, 10. So, you know, like, enrolling them in school is a kind of like, was always trying to find the let me see, the you know, who was going to offer them the best education, you know, who seemed more, you know, savvy in child, you know, early childhood development, with, you know, what have you. So, you know, my youngest son, you know, when I put him in pre-K, the teacher told me the learning requirements, and I was just like kind of appalled, like, the fuck out of here. Like, they was like, you know, they're only required to teach them from A to D. And from 1 to 10. Now, mind you, we got 3-year-olds. You know what I'm saying? At the time, 2 and 3-year-olds, and I'm like, that's it? Like, for a whole year, you gonna teach a kid A through D? Like, so to me, right there, that was setting them up. That's setting kids up for the failure. You know, off the break. She wasn't supposed to have disclosed that information to me, but, you know what I'm saying, just mano y mano, having a serious conversation, and, you know, she could tell where I was coming from, you know, the seriousness that I was taking in my son's education. She felt compelled to tell me, like, yeah, look, this is not for your son. Like, for real, this is not for what we're going to do, because we don't believe that that's how, you know, children of color should learn. We teach them the whole, you know, kick and caboodle, and teach them their numbers up to as far as they can go. But that kind of, like, right there just opened my eyes up to like holy shit, like, they really setting us up for the fall. You know, that's crazy. That's crazy to me. Yeah. So,
I mean, like I said, it's a real uphill battle, and the thing about it is, if it's strange, right? And I go back to communities like Ward 3, where you have less than 10 schools in the entire ward, right? There's about the same amount of residents per ward.
Ward 3?
There's about the same amount of residents in each ward. You know, it's because we try to divide the population a little evenly when we do the census. So there's about the same amount, usually between 70 and 80,000 people in each ward. Ward 3 has less than 10 schools. All of them are DC public schools.
What area is Ward 3? Just
so
for those
like,
that don't know.
It's like, I guess, like Chevy Chase, upper northwest,
right.
Kind of Wilson High School, kind of Timley Town.
Less than 10 schools over
them money areas.
Yeah,
Right.
There's less than 10 schools, and they're all DC public schools, and they're quality, and parents send their kids to their neighborhood school.
Wilson is gorgeous.
Yeah, and I represent.
I mean, Wilson got fucking Warren Buffett as an alumni. Like, for those that don't know that, and he, like, kicked them out like $6 million.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
yeah, but I mean, less than 10 schools in Ward 3. I represent 43 schools.
And Ward 8?
In Ward 8. In Ward 8 alone, I represent 43 schools, and still so many of our parents send their kids outside of the ward to get an education. If parents don't have faith in 43, and you have parents in Ward 3 who have complete faith in 6 or 7 or 8 schools,
you think that's a Southeast stigma?
I mean, I think it's a divide of resources and the attention we've given to make sure our public schools are quality in communities of color and in poor communities. I think historically, I think it's the product. Like the city for so long had left its public schools, especially in our poorest communities, out to dry. They hung them out to dry, and so, you know, we have problems with attracting quality teachers to come to a lot of our school buildings, or what they define as high quality teachers. We have a lot, we have a huge problem with teacher turnover, which has an effect on student performance. We have a huge issue with resources, and because Ward 8 has such a mix of DCPS and charter schools, and the behavioral policies don't match up, especially for some of our kind of hardest to manage or hardest to deal with students. What so many charters have done historically, and this is changing, this year and in years to come, this will change. but you have one count a year, right? So every school you counted your students, and based on your student population, that's how much money you got for the year. So many of our charter schools would take a whole bunch of students, and then the count would happen in October, November,
right after count day.
The school would get that money, and then all of the problem students, whether they were academically underperforming or they were behavior problems, they got displaced, and they had to go to their neighborhood public school. Problem is,
so hold.
Yep.
Yep. No, wait a minute. Say that again. So hold on.
Yeah.
Break that down in layman's terms. So basically, we just need y'all niggas in here for the count.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
And then once we got what we need, fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Man.
So it's
that's terrible.
Right. So it's either like, and sometimes it was, we'll kick you out because you were fighting or something like that. But sometimes they'll have parents. They call it counseling out. Right. So you have a parent come to a meeting and say, Mr. Johnson or Miss so-and-so, we don't think that this school is the right fit for your son or daughter. We would suggest that you enroll them in your neighborhood public school. When a school administrator calls you into a meeting and says that, 9 times out of 10 you're like, okay, maybe this isn't the right fit, right? And so whether it happened, whether they were kicked out or counseled out, these students end up in their neighborhood public school. Problem is, the money doesn't follow the student. So what happens is that neighborhood public schools end up in February or March having 30, 50, 100 more students than they had at the beginning of the year without the money to support them. And then how do you give a student a quality education if you don't have the money that the city allocated for their support? The school they left still has the money. And now it's on the principal and the staff at that neighborhood public school to try to do more with less, and that's the unfortunate part.
I think charter schools in general are kind of problematic.
You hear that?
They're just kind of problematic to me because it's like they don't even take the same tests that public schools do. So it's like how do you compare student performance when they're not even taking the same assessments?
Yeah, we all take kind of the same statewide one, the PARC, but the problem is, charter schools are technically public schools because they get public money, right. But they don't have to report publicly how that money is spent. They get to make their own rules around discipline. They get to make their own rules around staff and hiring. They get to make, in some cases, their own decisions about curriculum, and so, I'm a product of a charter high school, so I think where charters innovate and do different things and are able to provide unique opportunities for students, I think they have their place. But if we're going to spend public money, then you should be accountable to the public. And the fact that so many of our schools are able to do whatever they want without any public oversight and without any consequence, to be perfectly honest with you, is putting our students in a dangerous situation that we've seen time and time again, where that hasn't worked for our students, but it's worked very well for the people who are making money off these schools, right? And so that's the big problem.
So basically you're saying, in a nutshell, just to summarize the whole thing, charter schools come in, open up, they enroll the kids on the notion of we want to educate, but these kids that have problems, they on a to-go list. So once we get all this money, we gonna take this, build our kids up in our school, and make it more prestigious for the kids that we're trying to attract. Sweep you off, and here it is. We got a continuous cycle of, whatever, illiteracy, sexual deviancy, a life of crime, throw you off. So basically, it's like a funneling system almost, like you funneling kids from out the school system into the penitentiary, basically.
That's what it contributes to. That school to prison pipeline is still alive and well, and it's unfortunate, and it's mainly due to us not making the right investments and us not holding the right people accountable, unfortunately. And so, I try to do as much as I can on a board with very little authority no authority over the day-to-day operation of the system, and very little authority over the curriculum and policies that are created for the system. But where I can, I'm always speaking out, just like I did around the Blue issue or around more support for community schools that are going to make those investments in students and families. And so I'll keep speaking to those issues, because that's what's going to make the difference for our kids in Ward 8 and our families in Ward 8. And if we're not able to make those investments in real ways, right, not in pennies and cents, but in real dollars, right, and with real political will, we're just leaving our entire community in a really dangerous situation, and really leaving our community out in the cold to economics.
So let me ask you this right here, right now. You think in your next 4 years, you said you're gonna run again.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself running for a higher position in the city?
So
anytime soon. Right here. Go ahead on, drop it. Right here. Go ahead. We got it first. We got
exclusive.
it first. Like mayor. You think something like mayor? Like, you know what I'm saying?
So, all right, this is what I'll say.
Sound like a yes, y'all. He just
before I did this, before I ran for the board, I was an
yes.
advisory neighborhood commissioner. The reason I ran for that is because I felt like we needed more community-based leadership to fight for those issues around public safety, around city services, and I did that for 2 years, and we were able to make some good strides in terms of improving our neighborhood. And the reason I did that was because I thought that there was a reason for me to be there.
Chapter 1 is to come up.
Right,
that was
right.
to come up. ANC commissioner. The arrival is the DC Board of Education.
Yeah, and when I ran for the board, I had a reason, right?
So let's go. What's up, man? Answer the question, Mr. Bachelor.
So
do you see yourself in a higher position in the city, like mayor?
So I'm very happy with my position on the board, but I think if there's a reason for me to run for higher office, I think it's about talking to my community and making sure I'm the best fit. And if I have something unique to offer, I'll do that. But what I'll say, and this is the last thing I'll say on this, is I've never run for office because I thought that I was uniquely qualified to do the job. I thought, and I always think, that our community is uniquely qualified to tackle the issues that we have in front of us. We just need somebody who's going to be an effective coach, who's going to be an effective, who's going to be an effective person to bring people together and talk about our common issues, right?
Man, that sounds like you.
I think our community are the true leaders. But and my slogan was "Believe in Ward 8," because I think the big difference is the only way that we're going to get anywhere is if we're able to believe in ourselves, to believe in our community. You don't need to believe in Marcus, because I'm not going to be able to get a damn thing done by myself, right? But if we have a community who's motivated and who wants to do something and knows the issues and are able to effectively advocate for themselves, the sky's the limit. And I at the end of this 4 years, if I can say that our community is in a better position to advocate for our kids than we were 4 years previous, that's success in my book.
So basically, y'all be on the lookout for Mr. Marcus Bachelor, man. He's young, he's up and coming, man. He's for the people, he's by the people. He's from the same hoods that we from, man. He's doing big things. Real modest guy. I like this guy. I'm willing to endorse him, goddamn. I like him. Heart of the city's behind Marcus Bachelor. I like this guy, man. I want to appreciate you for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
For the last show of the year of Heart of the City. We're going into 2018, 2017. We had a lot of fun. Ms. Rouse said, keep up the good work. Shout out to my man, Cowboy Mike, Bree. I appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. We had a very interesting conversation with my man right here. If you want to know why schools are fucked up, he just told you why. And, he's going to need everybody's help to get this thing back together, because, he can't do it alone. I'm with him. I think we got to step up as a community to help these kids, because I see so many young men going to the penitentiary and being buried. than I see going to college, and we got to correct that. Like,
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying? We got to correct that. And, you know, and when we talk about stuff like gentrification, I got 1 minute left, you know, this is part of the problem that causes a cycle of gentrification. So, you know, in order to correct that, we must get on top of our education and educating our kids. So, once again, I want to thank you again, Mr. Bachelor. Feel free anytime you want to come through. You need anything from me. You know, I got $3-4 I can loan you. You know what I'm saying? But this the last show. Best of the best coming up. I got my girl AT. With the best of the, there you go. WLVS, 10 o'clock, let's work. There you go. I got my girl CC in the building. She don't say but 2 words, and that might be high and by.
Hey CC.
I got my favorite nerd in the building, Mr. Marcus.
I try.
I got Mr. Jacob, my favorite white guy. I got my 2 delinquent ass co-hosts that ain't even show up. Oh, no. Fuck out of here. I got my man back there. Shout yourself out, man. You real quiet, man. Jamal Host, my man, real distinguished gentleman.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I tell you who the fuck I am, but I ain't nobody, so don't even worry about it. We out. Thank y'all for tuning in to Heart of City Radio. Hope to see y'all all in 2018. We out.